welcome to another episode of Project Peak Performance. Today we have a very special episode. Myself and Dave Gibbons are co-hosting, and we have one of the PAC members, founding members, Rob Brady, the man, the legend, the coach, the TEDx speaker, the twin dad. This guy is, in a nutshell, one of the best blokes you'll ever meet, and we want to get underneath the surface with Rob today. So Rob, how are you, mate?
Well, actually,
good.
I'm ready and waiting.
Ready and waiting. We said just before we hit record, Dave said he's got a lot of questions and you're not going to feel comfortable. So how do you feel about that?
That's all right. Used to it.
We can go with it. Dave, you said you've got a few questions written down.
Hey,
so go on.
I swear to God, the funniest thing is here, if you actually read what I wrote down on here, it was the intro to Rob. So for any of the listeners who have obviously listened to Rob on our podcast, but don't really know a great deal of the background, Rob runs at like 100 miles an hour. I mean, just as James said, and I've wrote down a few things here this guy has done. So he's TEDx speaker, he's elite performance coach for a large IT tech firm, ultramarathon runner, mental health supporter and speaker in schools, twin dad. He's done over, I think, near 400 days consecutively in an ice bath. And on top of that, he's a nice guy.
Not consecutively without break.
Not without break. Well, every single day. He's not had a day off, has he, in like 400 odd days, you know, but he's not sat in there for 400 odd days.
A laptop working in there.
Yeah. That's it. So just, I mean, you know, you go through any one of those things that are on a lot of people's like bucket lists. You know what I mean? He's really flying high. So I think what I want to break down today for the listeners is what gets somebody like yourself, Rob, to this position, and why are you doing all of the things that you do? Why do you spend so much time looking to help people in all of the various ways that you do? Because everything that you seem to do has some kind of element of helping somebody in some way, whether it's somebody close to you, whether it's just somebody who passes one of your posts and sees a bit of inspiration in the morning. So I think what I want to try and break down today, and I'm sure James will join me in this, is I want to break down who is Rob Brady and what led you to this particular point in your life now, and why the hell do you spend so much time trying to help everybody? That's probably one of the main questions I'd want to ask, mate.
So my ideology is simple, is help one person a day. Yeah. So like I live my life like that, and that could be very simple, as in letting someone out on a busy car junction to trying to raise money for charities around mental health, spending time speaking to someone around, you know, privately on Messenger, raising awareness through TEDx, like, and it's a simple application, because then you can apply that to anything and just go, right, let's go and see where this takes me without feeling the pressure of a particular challenge. Because it's like, it's for me, it's never been like, it's not ego led, I have to do this at a particular time. It's like the process is always leans back to that one particular ideology. And that's not to say that I was that individual. It's been a transition over coming up to probably a decade now of trying to learn who the fuck is Rob Brady, actually. I'll be honest with you.
Nice, mate. Nice. So how does that come about, if you can enlighten us on that story a little bit? So you see, it's been nearly a decade in the changing of this character from one character to another. I suppose the questions that are shouting out is, was there anything wrong with the previous character? What was the environment that led to that change?
I wasn't saying there was anything wrong with me, like wrong with me that you can say to someone, like a person's got something wrong with them. I think, like, from a young age, I talked about this in my TEDx, from a young age, I struggled with finding who I was, or find acceptance, and I don't really know why until I started to uncover why my brain works the way they do. So I was quite lonely as a child in my teenage years. So you then tend to try and create masks to fit in with society. And that's then led to a lot of confusion about, like, who am I supposed to be in this world? So you have a mask, but you could be exhausted by that. And that happened. And then that turned me into, I don't know, I felt like I was quite disempowered in my own self. I wasn't confident, but I was then, you know, masking to be overconfident. Like I'd get to the point where I would mask a lot with arrogance and ego to hide my insecurities, because I didn't really want to know what people would think of me if I did show my true self. And that can lead you to some successes in life to some extent, but ultimately there's always a void that you're trying to fill. So that was sort of more like my teenage years going to my early 20s. And then don't get me wrong, like, you know, one of my things was I was work obsessed. I was a workaholic, obsessed, pretty much addict in that part. Like Jocko said, I think recently in one of his podcasts, was an extremely obsessed person with my career, and that's all I put myself into. And then this is what I've talked about it before, but I lost my best friend to suicide in 2016. At the same time, I was contemplating killing myself, and that is a harsh reality of all of it. And I was lonely. It was all in my head. The person who saw Rob Brady going to work was like this ambitious, fiery, assertive character, but behind the scenes, you know, I struggled to get out the front door because I was exhausted with who I was supposed to be and who I wanted to be, but actually who I was portraying in the life.
Yeah. Wow. That's I mean that's a huge change. So where were I'm really intrigued by this story now. So what were the opening steps? What was before you can accept, and surely you've got to be able to see what the problems are. How did that start to unfold?
So leading up to it, like I was heavily drinking. I was doing a lot of drugs. I was trying to fit in circles of people that weren't right for me, and I deep down knew it. There's always something. If you listen to a podcast and you're in those environments, there's that little niggly thing in the back of your brain telling you that this is not right for you. And then losing Chris was a massive eye opener because Chris was the larger of life character that was involved in all the parties and all the do's and like was always friendly with everyone. And for him, at first, when he decided to do what he did, I thought he was murdered, because I thought, how can you do that to yourself? Like, he was up here to me, like a demigod to me. And then I started to see behind the scenes of all of his struggles he had had for years, and I didn't know anything about this as a best friend. And then I started we look at going, actually, shit, that was me as well. Like, if he hadn't done what he did, I wouldn't exist. That's a fact.
Yeah.
So like, it came raw to that part.
Yeah.
I was about to ask, I was going to write it down, but I didn't feel I needed to because it was very kind of vivid for me to ask this question. Losing Chris for you was the catalyst for change.
100%.
Okay. That is a major experience. And you hear from a lot of people. I've read books on high performers and top coaches and people that have changed their lives off the back of an event that's happened, near-death experience. One person that springs to mind, I don't know if you chaps are familiar with a guy called Brendan Burchard. High Performance Habits is his book, and his story is similar in so much as he nearly died himself. In fact, he was dead for a period of time, was brought back to life, and that was then a catalyst. Something happened that made the significant change. You're now an elite performance coach, so a lot of what you work on with people, and especially given your charitable work and the bits that Dave shared, a fundamental part of who you've become is helping people change, right? Going from, whether it be in business, from one position that they're in today, to introducing tech and what have you, to making their life easier, whatever, or whether it be from a mindset or mental well-being capacity, helping them on the journey. The question that I'm leading to there is, do you believe that change can happen, significant change, like the change that you've made? You've become a completely different person from the one you've described to the one Dave and I now know. Do you believe that change can happen without the catalyst being so large? Have you seen people?
I have seen people. Change comes in different formats. Like, there has to be the moment against the wall, the moment against the ropes, the moment of KO, like in life of some sort. The moment you look in the mirror and you're tired of the person that's staring back. Like, if you look at the hardest geezer, for example, his change he talked about was that he stood in a nightclub toilets, staring himself in the mirror at 3 o'clock in the morning, and thought, I'm done with this life. And then he decided to run home. like he said, I've never run before. And that was the start of him doing it. So it wasn't like he'd, a massive major event of that night that decided him to do that. But it's what the pinnacle moment was for me was losing Chris. But when we had the celebration of Chris's life, Chris's sister stood up and they did the speech, a eulogy about Chris, and she was like 6 or 7 months pregnant. And she said with so much grace, so much, like, you could tell the passion and the proudness she had of her own brother. And she did with such grace with her, naturally a 6, 7 month old pregnant, you lost your brother and you've got this life inside you. Like, what a more conflicting moment you've probably got going on at the moment at that time. And then when I went to go and leave the event, I was stuck on my chair, and I remember her coming up to me because I felt so disempowered by losing Chris, and it just was a raw different emotions going on. And she came up and she just touched me on the shoulder and just said, "Time to get up." And that was the moment that I then stood outside and I was like, right, I need to sort myself out. I need to just open up. I need to be more vulnerable. I need to, whatever that is, whatever I face, I'm just going to take it, because this life I can't live anymore, because I won't be living this life anymore if I continue this way. Okay. And it's very hard because I was still lonely in that process, and I was lonely for a good few years, because you then go into the state of being like almost you're trying to find that next, actually realign yourself back to your authentic self.
Yeah.
Your childhood self, like, who do you want to be? Like, who's Rob inside, the 6, 5-year-old kid that, like, before environments changed, who you should be. Like, and you'll get misunderstood along the way.
Yeah.
It for me, as you explained it, then I guess it encapsulates the phrase that people will make change when the pain of staying the same outweighs the pain of change itself.
100%.
And that really, what you just said then, really, like, that smacked me in the face, that phrase. The pain of change, staying the same, has to outweigh the pain of change. Yeah. And so that was a major catalyst for the change in who you are and the person that we now know today. I obviously didn't know you back then, but the person I know and is sat in front of us right now certainly isn't the person you've just described. So it's become your purpose, right? It's almost your life mission now, to influence and shape and help other people around you. What do you think? Because it could have gone one of two ways, right? It could have gone one of a number of ways. But what do you think? Why has that been the case? You said you needed to find yourself. So did you, when you did this internal exploration, did it kind of strike you that actually this is what I'm meant for?
100%. And the people that I used to really deeply connect with, I used to help without realizing it, used to always say to me, like, when I was like, I was a chairman of a business networking group, so I had 35 businesses, and someone would be sat there and I'd be like, I'll grab you for 5 minutes, I just want to talk about what you might have had some struggles you were saying about, and I'd sit down and work out some strategies with them and say, and they'd go off and do that, and they'd come back and go, do you know what, Rob, like, you should go and do this more, because at the time I was like a sales lettings director of an estate agency, and I'm like, you should do this more often. I was like, yeah. But I soon started to realize that actually, like, that was the universe telling me that was my calling. And then like, going forward with those micro changes you see that happen within people, it's not me helping them change, it's them helping them change, just me being the champion for it. So it's like me championing their authentic self as a coach. It's not like I don't tell them the process. Every single person in this world is unique. So like, what I do, when people say to me, oh, I need to learn more about it, it's like, no, you learn whether that's suitable for you. All I'm going to do is be that champion that when I see that spark in the eye, we keep going.
Yeah.
And that's a really fulfilling process. Like, the whole goal is, when I eventually leave this world, like, it doesn't matter how many millions of pounds in the bank, it doesn't matter the cars I've got, whatever it is, like, I don't give a shit about the materialistic stuff in the world anymore. It's like, how many people turn up to your funeral? Because of how many people did you impact?
Yeah.
Like, if you're a selfish fucker and you live in a mansion, what do you fucking do? But no one's come to your funeral. The only people that probably come to your funeral is working out, like, how much money they're going to get out of you. But the beauty of it is that you never ever see that. You'll never ever see that happen.
That's amazing.
And I've witnessed it because of Chris. That's the bit.
Yeah.
Chris's celebration of his life. The venue was fully packed. I then hired out a place because everyone was like, I really would like to come, but we couldn't. Mum and dad couldn't fit any more people in, so we hired out this massive local pub that we used to go to, and that absolutely got crammed to the point where like no one else could fit in there. It went out onto the streets, and that shows the impact of someone who impacted every single one of those people. Like they thought, like, no, I'm going to come and celebrate his life.
Yeah. Wow. That's amazing.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm like, there's a flow of questions that I've got with Rob. Like the way Rob is a person, I think so many people from so many walks of life and so many backgrounds, or I'm going to use the term have limiting beliefs around themselves, can learn from Rob. And so I really want to expose so many of these elements because I know that Rob has so much to share that could benefit, being in a state of depression, borderline suicidal, to now being a mental wellbeing advocate that stood on that red dot at TEDx and did a talk about that. And you held yourself so immaculately, given that the person, I watched it with a group of people in my business on a massive screen in my office, and it brought me to tears watching you talk about your best friend who was on that massive screen behind you, and you held yourself together so immaculately. And that's why I feel so strongly about people have to hear your message. And it leads on to my next question. So it's almost like a chronological journey. You also have ADHD, right? But you are such a calm, balanced person. So tell us about that. I want to understand that from a personal standpoint, but equally from how you manage that and how you harness it. Personally, I think it's a superpower because when we agree to do something as part of the project and you take the lead on something, it's like an hour later it's done.
Yeah.
It's like a superpower of focus. So talk to us about that. Diagnosis through to controlling it.
The ADHD part, I only really found out in the last sort of few years, and I've actually unpacked it more purely because life's callings is I met my partner Kel, and that's what she specializes in. Like she's literally she works with special needs children, globally delayed children. Her speciality is in autism and ADHD. So like she's helped me with those strategies, but it was almost like a light bulb moment when I found out. And all of a sudden it made sense of everything before. And I forgave myself for who I was.
Yeah.
So like in my school years, I was seen as the disruptive one. I wasn't focused because I didn't give a shit about the subjects because my brain had already worked out that was not interesting for me when I'm never going to do a career in this. So I don't care about this sort of side to it. Like I don't care about religious studies. So don't tell me I need to do the homework. So I was disruptive on that part. Working life was terrible. Like, although I got successful in what I did because I obsessed about it, at the same time, I was so disruptive, especially in leadership meetings, because like I would see the fixing boy in this and everyone would be fluttering around and I'd be like, no, we just need to do this. And I'd be interrupting people. And you guys experience it sometimes. If my ADHD brain's out, guys be chatting in a meeting, all of a sudden I'm just like, I'm going to interrupt here. Like, and I have to, so the thing that I have had to deal with and understand a bit is that it's not an excuse for me to act that particular way. And I've segmented what I call my ADHD brain to who Rob is. And then I then identify what am I doing to get this ADHD brain too much on a high or a low, or how do I focus it? And that's where I've got into those strategies of like cold water therapy and understanding how that works, like habits of eating, not drinking to the excess that I used to do, and sleeping and structure to my diary and structure to my week about how do I keep that in tame. And then I've learned a lot about flow concepts as well, like understanding how I can hyper focus and jump back out of it, and understanding not hyper focus to burnout.
Yeah.
The reason I'm nodding and smiling all the way through that is everything you described there is like me and Dave. But I can totally relate to so much of that. And that's why I find it fascinating, because I just know from our interactions working together, both in business, but also on this project, it's the ability to hyper focus and the ability to kind of go, the blockers go on, and you're like, right, I'm in this. And it's also your calmness, your demeanor. For someone who has ADHD, archetypal ADHD is quite big and gregarious and quite loud, right? That's archetypal, but you aren't that.
No, but I think, like, again, I'll give you an example. If I drink heavily, or I go on a night out, then I become that person, because that's like the fire in my ADHD brain. That's where I like, so the contrasting Robs of who you were. Yeah, my networking group I was a chairman of, and quite embarrassing. We went on, organised a whole works tour across to France, and it was like 80 businesses there. I got drunk and was really loud, obnoxious on there. Like, so like that was former Rob until I learned that, and then now I know what I shouldn't be doing. So like when people talk about cold water therapy, I go, oh, I can't do that. I know it's good for my brain, so I just do it. Like, that's a discipline to it.
I was literally about to say, you took the word straight out of my mouth there. The thing that you've described there, patience and discipline, two things that you wouldn't normally associate again with ADHD. I'm being very generic here, but this is to try and help those that listen.
But James, you're right, because that was me. Like, multiple projects, I'm going to get involved in this. Like, a very simple thing I have in my good notes in my iPad is the ideas to dump. Yeah. And every time I think of some stupid fucking idea, I'll put it in there, and I come back to a week later and review whether actually it aligns with, like we're talking off camera, like aligns with a plan or a goal of what I want to achieve. Yeah. And then most of the time I look back and think, what was I thinking? If it's still good enough, I wait another 3 weeks and then decide whether that's actually something, a project that I want to get involved with and do something. One of the key things I worked out with a lot of people struggle with is flow concepts, and you can only flow between certain things. So for me, for a period of time, it was very much a focus on the TEDx. I knew that I couldn't start my ultra marathon training until I finished my TEDx. Before, in the past, I'd be trying to do TEDx, trying to set up this, trying to do all my running, and then I go into complete crazy burnout, meltdown. And that's where I've known in the past is where, obviously, that's where old Rob starts to think, actually, screw this. I don't want to be in this world anymore.
Yeah. It's fascinating. And I think there will be a lot of people listening, whether they are diagnosed with ADHD or they have tendencies that display themselves. I can totally relate to almost all of what you've said. So undiagnosed, but if I'm self-diagnosing whilst, on this podcast episode, I would say there's going to be certain elements you've told me in the past that you believe that I display that too. So not for me, I'm not being selfish with what I am. That's the beauty of doing a podcast, right? Yeah. But equally, I think there'll be a lot of people that will be listening that will go, I can relate to that. Yeah, that was me. Yeah, actually, I'm like that. What would be your top 3 things that you would say implementable, relatively easy? What would they be that someone could come off this pod and go, right, I'm going to do those 3 things and it's going to help me?
A toolkit. Yeah.
First toolkit is recognizing that's a different part of your brain. So it's not your identity. So you are not who you are based on your thoughts or how you are. That also creates accountability towards, I'm always been this way. I'm just going to continue this way. So first one is identifying that. If you feel like you've got that, like, yes, you can go and get diagnosis. You can look into that. Diagnosis obviously is the main part, because it's the seal of, actually, I do have this. Second part is understanding dietary, environment, and medication. Don't feel like you can't be medicated towards it. It might help you in the short term whilst you understand stuff, but the main part is lifestyle and dietary and stuff like that. So you then have to look at, like, what am I putting in my body? How are my environment dictating how I feel? Am I getting enough sleep? Am I getting out and doing stuff that you think about it, it's a dopamine part to it. So you've got to look at, like, what am I doing? Is it healthy dopamine or bad dopamine?
So you're talking getting out, getting sunlight, going for a walk, fresh air, as opposed to sugar, caffeine, etc.
Yeah, like, and then the third part is actually recognizing in the moment when you're doing this stuff. Like, if your tendency to have a drink and you have a beer, the worst thing with people with ADHD is they want to follow the next one. I want to chase that next hit. And that could be all sorts of stuff, like an extra cookie. So you've got to look and recognize in those moments. What the bit is, becoming self-aware of it is the main part. Going like, oh, do I really need another one? Or is it because I'm trying to get that another chase, another little fix in my brain to get me back on that thing. That's the reason why cold water therapy works really, really well, because you get the spike, but you get a real slow decline in actually it coming out of like your dopamine hit effectively. So you got to look at it from like, if you look at a list of habits you do on a daily basis, are they good towards the brain or are they bad towards the brain?
Yeah. Really, really.
And also last one I probably recognize is overstimulation and setting boundaries towards it. So like you can overstimulate yourself, watching films, getting involved with like a big audience of people. You have to have that downtime just to reset yourself back.
Yeah.
Calibrate. It's interesting actually you say that, because yeah, again, totally relatable. I can very easily go on YouTube. I was watching something the other day, and the guy was talking about, there's three forms of YouTube. You've kind of got education, entertainment, and then edutainment, and they're really dialing in on education. And I only really use YouTube for educational purposes. I don't really go on there for entertainment purposes. But I can binge then. So rather than going on and watching one episode of something that gives me enough to kind of then go, right, yeah, I can take that away. And no matter what it is, whether it be one of the 8 wheels of our dimension, 8 segments of our dimensions or whatever, but I'll kind of go, oh, I really like that. So I'll watch something else by that person. And then something else. And 2 hours later, I've watched 8 videos and I'm none the wiser.
Yeah.
So, but it's true. It's the recalibration time, isn't it? And I think there's some really, really great implementations in there that people can take away. I think the big one though is, like you say, that self-awareness combined with the discipline to act on that self-awareness.
Yeah. And the knowledge tools. A lot of people don't have the knowledge. They don't really know, do they? So this is why it's so important that when we're speaking to the likes of Rob, who is not just living his life with ADHD, but he's also a coach as well. So he understands a hell of a lot about it. I think it's important for people to understand. I mean, as you're talking there, Rob, you'd mentioned about the overstimulation, but in fact, everything you're saying, there's a story being developed in my head of taking me back to that particular time. I did that thing. It was only yesterday. We were went to the Trafford Centre yesterday, lunchtime, and we were having a little walk around, and I went to get some lunch. Now, big shopping centre, tons of people, loads of noise going around, this, that, and the other. We walked up to Nando's. Nando's is dead easy. You know what you're going to order before you go in. Everything's cool. I had to wait probably a minute outside in a queue. And then we walked back and he put us at the back and there was just loads of noise. I sat down, my hunger went like that. And Claire was like, what do you want? I said, I don't really want anything now. I just want to get out of here now. Like, get me out of this place now and get in the car. And I never even think of anything like that. But these are the type of things. I mean, Rob diagnosed me with ADHD ages ago. Oh, I've not been diagnosed before. I don't know myself, to be honest. But yeah, it's really important because as you're talking, even I'm thinking to myself, that's a good thing to notice. Because one of the biggest things, a lot of people don't even notice these things, and to see it and to act.
With diet, Dave, like similar things with diet, like coffee, spicy food, cheese.
Yeah,
that stuff actually is not good for you if you've got ADHD. So
cheese.
Like for me, cheese, yeah, because of like there's some elements of like you think about eating a lot of cheese before you go to bed. Sometimes you have psychedelic dreams. Mm-hmm. So like there's elements to that. My brother's been diagnosed with ADHD and he runs a shop that sells cheese, coffee, and spicy food is 3 main things, which is crazy. Yeah. And that's like his thing, but that's what he had as a kid. Like he'd be up late at night eating that sort of thing. So when you look at coffee, for example, and you look at former myself and who I am now, I'd wake up in the morning, I'd have coffee because I'd be drinking for the night before trying to chase that thing. So I'd be tired. I think I need coffee, but coffee actually puts you back into a sleep. So then you almost coffee, having cigarettes, trying to chase it up, coffee, up, down, up, down. So like when you get towards the end of the evening, you're crashing.
Yeah.
You're overstimulated because you've got too much caffeine inside yourself, but you're restless. And that's where, see, it's almost like managing, like actually, sometimes you need to take the break and go, right, actually, I'm not going to have coffee, but I've got to do, I don't know, hydration stops or whatever it's going to be to still get me feeling fresher again. But a lot of people go, oh, I can't not do a whole day without coffee. It's like, well, continue fucking being the same way you are then. But don't moan if like you're still moaning a week later about life is tough or you're struggling to do stuff. It's like, well, change comes always from within. No one else can change it.
Yeah. I love that, mate. I love
It's
that.
I think the other thing, just on the ADHD topic, I do look at it that if it can be harnessed in the right way, it is a superpower.
Yeah.
I've said it a
100%.
couple of times, and I really want to hit that home, because I think for you, Rob, when you go into focus mode, it's quite clear that nothing gets in your way; it just happens. Dave, you've clearly been the same in your business life, and I think it also then it becomes almost a borderline obsessive nature, doesn't it? It's almost like an obsessive compulsive, impulsive type nature. But if it's
It's an addiction.
harnessed and controlled, it can be really, really powerful.
Yeah, so like that's where boundary comes into it. So like if I'm focusing on a project, Cal knows about it and I'll tell her and she knows how my brain works. So there's no point her coming in to interrupt me, because I'd become rude. Not in that I'm that way. It's like I'm focusing, I'm out of flow here. So she knows how to deal with that part. But equally at the same time, now I know there's endpoints. So I'll be like, right, I'm gonna be another 10 minutes and then I'm gonna stop at this point.
Love that. So
Otherwise, it's like an hour, it's like James, you said, like you do one video, 7 videos later, 2 hours later, you're still binging it. And like you said, I was going to do something like 10 minutes ago. It flies, doesn't it?
yeah, absolutely. But equally, when you get your head into something, it's like an impenetrable. But I think the thing you're very good at is, like you say, boundary setting. So where you're telling Cal, look, I'm going to need an hour, and there's little point in trying to communicate with me in that hour, because I'm in. So one final question on it for those out there that want to pick up on what you've shared around being able to get into this flow state. What do you have a routine or a process, or how do you get into that flow state?
So good question. One is to get into a flow state, you have to have something in the diary of like you're telling your brain, right, this is what we're going to be focusing on. But yeah, for me, how flows works better for me is you have to recognize you have external things going in your life to allow for an internal flow to happen. So you have to look at what really matters outside that parameter of inside your brain. So like if you've got this never-ending list in your head and you want to get into a state of flow to do particular work or go for a run and to have a nice run, and you've got this massive list that you keep going on, like, I don't know, emptying the dishwasher, but also I've got to paint this wall, or I've got to sort out a VAT return, or whatever it is that you've got to take. I've got to do this. Like if you've got a never-ending list, you're never going to be able to get in a state of flow, because your conscious brain is giving you that, like, this is important.
Yeah.
So you always have to go through like a state of like, does it have to be done now, or can it wait? Is it really important? Cross them off the list. So for me, like I've got a thing in our kitchen. It's like things to do for the month or things to do for the week, and I write them all down. So I know that they're there and they're out of my brain. I've got to worry about them anymore. I recognize, and I've told my brain that stuff will be done. Just I don't need to occupy. I don't need to think about it every single time. Then that enables you to have a bit more of a free flow. So if anyone doesn't know the flow concept, it's equivalent to like autopilot driving. You drive to a location, your brain's done it subconsciously without you consciously having to turn left or right. Or you're in your running and you've done something, but it's just free flowing. You haven't thought about it. Out of flow is when you're running and you're in your head and your head's telling you to stop. This is tough.
Yeah.
Crap. Stupid. Why are you doing this? So it's quietening. So a lot of the science behind it has basically come from the more you can quieten your external things that are going on in your life, the better you can quieten your internal mind, because that's where actually peak performance happens. They actually say that your actual brain goes almost into sleep mode when you're doing something, because you're focusing on that one task.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Like you just have to recognize what's important, basically. What's important? Is it really fucking important to be having to paint that wall right at this very moment? And can it wait another 2 weeks? Yes, it can, because no one's going to die from it. It's just a dirty wall. And that's really hard. And you've got like a ADHD brain, because you can be quite OCD with that sort of stuff to it. But it's just setting that time. So it's again, boundary setting. I need to get that wall done. Sorry, darling, I'm not going to do it right now because I've got to focus on this task. I've booked it in the diary in 2 weeks' time. I'm going to get it done then.
I love that. we timestamp this little bit here so I can extract it and pass it on to my other half, Hayley?
Yeah.
The ball doesn't need doing right now. I can do it in a couple of weeks. It's in my calendar. It's done.
If she listens to this podcast, she'll be painting this weekend.
Giving a great example, I've got, my garden was horrendous. Like the twins came along, I was due to do a garden, and it's been an absolute state out there. It's disgusting. Like I've been looking out the window to do it, and if you look at anything that my ADHD brain hasn't done, was the garden. Obviously, naturally coming to winter, so I was like, right, this summer, gonna get it done for the kids. Got a skip that, sat there for a week because I knew I still had to do that job. And then I was due to go out and run like a 30k run, and I run past a skip and it was empty, and I thought, the 30k run can actually wait. I can do that tomorrow if I can, but I know I've got 2 or 3 weeks left on this skip, so I have to get this done now. So then I flipped from that mode to the skip mode, and then 6 hours later, hyperfocus cleared all the garden. Now it's in the skip, and now that's out of the way. So I haven't got to run past the skip every time I want to go out for a run, feeling guilty that I haven't done that particular job.
I feel like I want to move the chronological order of this along, but there is a really good point you make there. Do you find with the ADHD brain, there are times when you kind of look at a job and it can almost put you into a state of procrastination as well? So you kind of look at the garden and go, oh, I'll do it, but another day, I won't do it now. But then it gets to a point where you're like, I still haven't done it.
Yeah, 100%. I said it's the biggest trait. I speak to my friend who's like, me and him are best friends, and he's medicated ADHD, and we always send him stuff for each other because it's like a 30-second task takes you 3 weeks to do the 30-second task.
Yeah.
So like that is a learning state, but I think that becomes, if you don't put it, like, so me, I put it on my kitchen wall. I've got a chalkboard that we write out stuff, so it's visually, I've told myself it's like an IOU board that I've got to go and do this stuff. So it's not in my head anymore. I've put it out, and that's the reason why when I say that I'm going to go and do an ultra run and I put it out onto social media, I do that and I regularly communicate that, because I'm laying down the foundations, telling the public and the world that, no, I'm going to do this. It's not secret hidden away. Like, I'm going to be accountable for getting this shit done.
It's a commitment. I was about to say as well, those things that you put off, you procrastinate over, but then when you end up doing them, in the moment, you're like, why didn't I do this sooner? Because I'm actually really quite enjoying it.
Yeah.
Training the brain between the two. The things that have helped me the most is training the brain to understand. And I've talked about this a lot within all our podcasts. It's the difference between motivation and discipline. And loads of people are all still on motivation. We talked about it in the Chris Hunt podcast. Like 70% of people are in that motivational thing, but it's the discipline. And the discipline is the stuff that makes you get through that. I'll put it off. Like, if you put it as a non-negotiable, so if you talk to yourself and say, right, what is my non-negotiables for this week? I'm going to get this, and this done. It doesn't matter. You can put them in the diary of particular things, but at the end of the week, they're non-negotiables. They're not like, I'll try and get that done. I will get that done instead.
Yeah. I think what I'm hearing a lot from this as well, Robin, it's really interesting to listen to, is you've developed a way of looking through the noise and going, okay, out of the 100 things this is screaming about now, what 30 are worth my time and what's not? And you've managed to develop and manage the brain and maybe the ADHD symptoms so that they're controllable for you. You're relieving yourself from the pain of having all of these things. And just that one thing there, one of the things that could be huge for the listeners is, if you can just start to look at what is it that's being said up there, what are these things, get them out onto paper so that they're not in the snow globe, and then to start making a list. And once they're on paper and you've seen them, you'll have a whole new lease of life over the list, and you can refilter it, which then allows, secondary to the list creation is, now I'm looking at it now, there's not as much as I thought there was in the first place. This is a lot more manageable. It's a lot more easy for me to attain, and I can start getting it. But if you don't take that first step, you'll never see the 30 things out of the 100, because it's just like a snow globe is kind of how I'm picturing this in my brain. That makes sense.
Yeah, and so this is the real life side to it. 2016, pre-Chris passing, I slept through 2-3 hours a night. That's it. I used to drink myself to sleep. So like, I'd be up at 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning with that list in my head, going through it. How am I going to solve this? What am I going to do that? And that was exhausting, to a point where maybe every 2 or 3 weeks, I'd crash out on one day where literally I couldn't, my brain would be like, right, you're going off into fucking sleep mode now. And I could not, like, whatever it was, 5 o'clock in the evening, it would be like, I'll be done.
Yeah.
That's not a happy way of living. Former now, like Rob today, I can go to bed at a particular time because I've allocated the times for when I know I need to go to sleep.
Yeah.
Like, I put my head on the pillow and I don't have that inner chat anymore. Because it's all out of my brain and into some format of either journaling, on a board, on a document of some sort.
Yeah, no, it's really powerful stuff. And you know, a lot of these things just seem to be the simplest of things. It's not, you know, if we can get like I say, if we can create this toolkit or show other people what you've been doing for your toolkit, which comes down to noticing, adapting to the change with certain schemes. Let's do the lists. Let's make sure this. What other things can we put in with regards to the foods and the dietary, the culture? I think it's brilliant, mate. How you're actually answering the questions, which was my initial question. How do you get all this done? Because you're just like a super dad. Just having twins on its own.
I was literally just say, I don't know if you heard the twins in the background there, because like they were going off to bedtime then. And one of them doesn't sound like she wants to go off to bed. So apologies if you're listening to that one. How do I get this done?
You've explained it in a great way, but if you've got any more detail on that, that'd be fantastic.
It's just a structured, like there's two parts to it. There's a structure of how you live your week, and you control your week. So when I see my clients, I don't allow the clients to book in whenever they want. They can book in freely whenever they want, but I control my times within that.
Yeah.
I can level up my me time and also level up my commitments as a father. So I have those conversations with Kel. Like we have weekly check-ins about what's going on, how we're getting on, what we need to do to support each other, rather than it just being a state of confusion. And that's where conflict tends to happen. And again, going back to the whole flow concepts, if you haven't got those healthy environments, you tend to struggle to be able to achieve and do stuff because something's happening outside the scenes of it. So that's how I tend to operate.
Yeah.
I wrote a word down that seems to ring true throughout everything you've shared. Communication.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like you're really, and I can be bad at this at times. So that's why I've written it down. A, for, again, selfish benefit, but B, just to relay back what I've picked up from this is that you're really good at communicating, A, your own boundaries, but B, what you need, and also from a communication standpoint, being able to receive what someone else might need from you. So you say, you and Kel, you have your check-in, but equally you'll say to Kel, look, that's in my diary. I need to dedicate time to this, and that can't waver from that. That has to happen. Like, very, very good communicator.
In a world where everything feels like it needs to be done now, like a simple one is like, is someone gonna die if I don't do it now? No. So like it can wait. Like we overconsume ourselves with too much stuff. Communication is communication internally, communication with your inner circle, communication with the people you work with, your family members, your friends. As leaders is a massive thing that I work with. Communication. How do you communicate with teams? Like weak leadership is like the fundamental thing that I see in so many businesses out there. And I either have clients who work with me with fantastic leaders or become fantastic leaders, or I have clients who don't want to work with me because I call them out on their bullshit that they're fucking shit at communicating as a leader. And that's
communication and candid communication.
Yeah, communication and candid, a bit like empathetic communication, I call it, and anything else. So communication is key. Yeah, it is massively key towards everything, and also communicating from a point of understanding the other person, not understanding how that person needs to understand what you should be going on, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
All from the other person's perspective, not from yours.
Amazing, mate. So at the beginning of this, I and James both gave an intro to you, which is our interpretation of who Rob Brady is. What's yours? Who is Rob Brady to you, and what have we got to look forward to in the coming years?
So I always look at like life in blocks of stages, and my former self was, started in a state agency and became a sales and lettings director and run that. And I had a networking group and chairman and all sorts of stuff like that. And then I learned all around marketing concepts and how business effectively worked. And then I randomly met Mark, who then pulled me into Iceberg, and then I became a performance coach. So to me, I still am at that very much early stages of what I want to do as a coaching wise and beyond. So it's weird because Kel says to me, it seems like in all your career you just seem to randomly make up job titles for yourself and roles that don't ever exist in businesses, which actually is very, very true. So for me, like I don't feel I'm accomplished in anything that I want to achieve out of this world, because I don't get obsessed about doing the TEDx. It was a great process and I recognize that, but it's like that was for a greater purpose than me just doing a TEDx. But I don't want to just, that's Cal said to me, like, it's just a part of, you celebrate it, but it's not like the Johnny Wilkinson's kick a ball and afterwards you're like, what do I do in this world? Makes sense. So for me, I'm quite early on in my new stages of mental health, well-being, coaching, business development, whatever it might be that I'm going into. And I'm just I don't know, like when I started my career in agency, I used to do a lot of stuff and people used to say to me, why did you do that? Why did you do that for free? Or why are you getting up early in the morning to do that? And I go, I don't know, I'm just going to see where that leads to me. But I know I'm interested in it. I'm not doing everything and anything. I'm just interested in these particular things. So I'm just applying that same formula to see what happens in the future. Outside of it, like of that business environment, no, first thing I always say is I'm a proud twin dad, because I am. And I'm living my authentic life, which I feel like a lot of people out there don't do. So I feel very fortunate that I'm in a position where I can do that.
Amazing. And what can we look forward to in the coming years from Rob Brady? Because you've smashed loads of milestones off already, mate. You can't have that many left on the list.
Like ultimately, I'm new to ultra running, so I want to get into ultra running more. I want to see where that goes and what level that takes me to. I'm coming more deeper connected within the well-being space, but more of a very much grassroots level. So I'm involved in a lot more charitable work. I'm about to become an ambassador of a local charity. And I feel like that is very much early stages. So my goal and my dream is to actually have a charitable organisation that helps grassroots communities, very much the community-centric part of it. That's still on a national scale, but not faceless. Yeah. Like, you know where your money's going, and you know you're actually helping the people local to your area.
Yeah.
Like, you know that if you're running an event, it could literally be the person down the street you're supplying therapy to.
Yeah. Nice.
So that, yeah, I'd probably say that. And I don't know, like, I'm very much early in the stage of being a dad. So
you're evolving. The new
great,
is
what
evolving.
greater gift can you give than just seeing where your children develop?
Yeah. Beautiful, mate. Beautiful. Have you got anything, James? Sorry, mate, I've rabbited on here. Last part.
Not at all. No. I think it's been very, very evenly balanced. I was going to touch on the ultra side of things, but it sounds to me like that's an extension of the discipline. That's like a test, both mentally and physically, that you've kind of looked at and gone, I need to put myself through that. I think mentally you've got a really good handle on what's going on. I think is it now that the physical challenge to it as well features for you?
Yeah, because I'll be honest with you, like I've now I'm like 9 marathons, and every single marathon I've trained for, but I've literally just turned up. A couple of marathons I've just literally gone, right, I'm going to go run a marathon today. I think when the kids were like 5 months old, I knew I had to do a marathon on a particular day. I didn't train for it. I woke up one day and was like, Cal, right, I've got to go on this marathon today, and just went out the door and started running a marathon. So like a lot of people's mindset would be like, oh, I could never do half marathon. I could never do a marathon. And my view is everyone has a marathon inside them. Like, I've seen it firsthand from my mum, 65 years old, being able to do that. So I remember having a conversation with Ian, and this was even before Project Peak Performance was set up. Called up Ian and said to him, like, you've done ultras now. Like, what's the next stage? If I've done marathons, and I don't want to do, like, I'm a bit stuck. Do I do quicker marathons or do I do ultras? And he's like, what do you feel like? And I was like, well, I don't know. I wouldn't really get excited I wouldn't be excited about running a marathon quicker. It doesn't do anything for me. It's like a marathon's a marathon, I get excited about the unknown of what an ultra will bring. So like what people fear from a marathon is actually what I'm seeking. So like I'm seeking the 3 o'clock shit time where I'm on my own running around and everyone's asleep and I'm going, oh, just give up, Rob. You've done enough today. And I pierce through that because that's like the next level of where you can take yourself. Whereas so many people don't even start, they can get the finish line because they're worried about that happening. Like if you embrace that is going to happen, like, you know, my training now is I'm very much more respectful of my training because it is an ultra. That's brought in massive amounts to it. But like I train to find my weaknesses to then being able to on that day that I've already sort of prepped for that stuff. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a mindset thing. That's the thing. I remember speaking to someone a month ago and they were saying about he does a lot of 5Ks and fair play to him. He's a phenomenal 5K. He's do cross country running on you from school. He like leads those park runs where he pretty much wins them every week. And he said to me, like, you know, no disrespect, Rob, but like, you know, you're looking to do like marathons. You've done a couple of marathons, but I look at your time, you're not really doing ultras. And like, you know, you're physically capable of doing that. I said, yeah. And he was like, but how? I was like, well, we've got two different mindsets we're talking towards here. You do your 5Ks, run them fast, but you told me you can't ever do over 10K. And I'm done marathons and trying to go to ultra marathons. Like we'd be having two different sets of communications here. Like it was pointless to having this conversation because like you can't even comprehend going over 10K and what that looks like. So for you thinking that I can't go from a marathon to an ultra marathon, my view is like, I don't know, it's just another 8K. And then I could probably class myself as an ultra runner. Like,
Yeah.
I give you a great tip for how I run my marathons. And this is when you look at it, break it down into sequences or anything you ever do. It's always about chunking. How my brain works. If I was to say I was going to run from here to, I don't know, Kel's auntie and uncle's house or nan and granddad's house, the length of that is like 40 odd K, 42K. Calculate out because it's basically a marathon. That feels like a really long way. But if someone said to me, like I'm doing now, run to the village, run to another village, run to that and run it 3 times, I feel that's possible.
Yeah.
Or if I'm on my marathon state and I'm running a marathon and I'm done in like, I've done, I don't know, 42 or I've run like 5K and I'm thinking, oh, I'm like 1/8 done. Like the next time I'm doing, I'm almost a quarter there. Like a quarter, that's easy. Like I've done halfway. So like it's just not thinking the actual mileage, you try and break it down into like a more simpler format.
I love that, mate. I do that on mountains. Whenever I look at the time to walk up and back, I only ever look at the up because that's my target. Once I get up, I'm up, and that's me done. On the way down, I'm just coming down.
Yeah,
Exactly. Think about it, and it halves it, and it makes it a lot easier on everything to do. So I get that, mate. 100%. It's a right little trick that.
You can simplify it even further in terms of the explanation as well, can't you? You know, if you look at golf, like if you went down to the local park or pub or whatever and sat down with a 75-year-old guy and said, look, you need to go and walk 14, 15, 16 kilometers today, they'd probably go, all right, thanks.
Yeah.
But you say, here's a set of golf clubs, there's 18 holes and you've got to do each of them individually. Go, yeah, cool. That's a great day out with the boys.
There's a 5-mile walk done straight away as well.
Exactly that. So I guess it just contextualizes once you break it down. But it's again, like you've just said, Rob, with the conversation you had with the 5K runner, it's repositioning, isn't it? How the perception of what it is, the challenge that you face. You know, of course he can go and run a marathon. If he can run 5Ks, the fastest in the local area, of course he can run a marathon. He's just got to re-look at how he wants to do it. It's also about the desire to achieve the result as well, right?
Yeah.
Whether you can run a marathon or not is entirely down to you. He who says he can and he who says he can't, both right.
Both right.
The analogy really for more is like in your own personal life, but also in anyone listening who's running a business or in that leadership position, like 5K class really is now class pretty much for me. I could do a 5K as almost like a sprint for what longevity I can do. So it's the realistic expectations on actually length over speed effectively.
Mhm.
So like if you're looking at any project you're looking to do, so for example, like my TEDx, that was a short thing to do, but took ages to refine it.
Yeah.
So I knew that I had to be kind for myself. I'm not going to start and think about, I'm going to get that 80 minutes done within the first 2 weeks. So I had 5-6 months worth of preparation for that. The ultra is 6 months worth of preparation for it. I'm not going to go out on the day one to start trying to run an ultra straight away. It started 5, 10, 15. And that's what I was saying to him. So anything like goal wise you're looking to do, like that's the finish line is the goal part, which is always a good part to have, because that stops you saying yes to random shit that removes you from the goal. But it's the segmentation on it. Like, James, I've worked with your teams really well recently on all the stuff we're doing with your partners. Like, if that project started off and we were doing it very much early on, and we said, right, we've got to do all of this, like it would have been overbearing. But every time I speak to people, the biggest thing I do with coaching is, one, my passion is finding your authentic self in you and your business and your teams. My second one is simplifying the process. And I always say to people, like, oh, but what else can I do? I go, no, just do those. Just do that 3 things, because we'll get there. I know we're going to get there, but just don't overcomplicate it. Like, just do them. Just do them to the best. And then when you're done, come back to me. And every time someone takes on more is when they tend to miss the coaching session, because they haven't done any of it. Because again, it's going back into procrastination and they've never thought it, and it's too much of a challenge and what sort of side to it.
Yeah, put in the
So like I would say, it's like, what's one next step? Like my marathons have always been about taking one extra step. That's it.
Yeah.
Like step up to the door, that's one step done. Another step, another step, another step.
Yeah.
Love it. Love it. So much value in the episode. And I think I don't know about you, Dave, but there were some key areas in Rob's background and journey. And just for those listening, of course, Rob is a part of the pack. But we want to be really clear. Yes, we had a discussion offline, but Rob had no idea the direction of travel that we were going in. So we want to be really, really clear that this wasn't staged or structured in any way. And I think that's important, because the topics that we've unpacked, I believe, especially with some of the implementations that you've shared, there's so much value in there that people can take away. It's been a great episode. So yeah, Rob, absolutely brilliant. I'm sure there's so much more we could unpack with you, and there may well be a part 2, or we bring it into the wider group of the pack to discuss on the review, I'm sure. But yeah, what a great episode.
Yeah, thanks for your time, Rob. Brilliant, mate. Brilliant speaking, and I hope you've enjoyed it. And before we go, if you could say anything to the world to help it be a better place, what would it be?
Oh,
good one.
if you could say anything in the world to be a better place, what would it be? Like, I would say, is your footprint impacting the world for being greater or worse? And that's a simple fact of it is, like, just be a fucking kind human being. Just help people. Like, it will come back to you. Don't just be a selfish fucker.
Love it.
Be a fucking kind human being. What a way to end.
And on that bombshell, everybody, we'll see you on Tuesday. Goodbye.